No, it's fine.
Going live.
Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to my shop. It is time for another weekly live. We do this every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Central Time. If you are new to the lives, then you can look down in the description down below and I have timestamps with all the questions beside it. Usually the first half of the video is actually going through what I'm talking about, and then after that it slowly kind of devolves into a Q&A. So if you have questions that you want to throw in that and you are live, go ahead and throw them in the chat. If you are watching this recorded, then look down in the description and you can see what they are and get you kind of close to where they are in the video. Also, we do regular updates of things coming up in the week, so if you want to stay up to date, then just watch the beginning of all the lives and you'll get that information. Things coming up next week, a week from this Thursday, is the MWTCA National Meet in Michigan City, Indiana, and this is the big tool sale. This is the largest tool meet in the world, period. And it's a lot of fun. So Thursday is the tool sale. That's a tailgate outside. Usually the best deals, a little bit more of the user quality tools. And it's my favorite sale. On Friday we go inside and you get a little bit better quality tools, a little more of the collectible items. And then Saturday is whatever's left over, and usually you can get some wheeling and dealing going on because people don't want to carry it back out to the car. And so it's a lot of fun. But the tool buying is only one small portion of the whole thing. There are also demonstrations and talks, and I'll actually be doing a demonstration on Thursday in the afternoon, and so I'm looking forward to doing that. You do have to be a member to come out to the tool meet, Michigan City, Indiana, and yeah, you can become a member at the door, but it's a tool meet for MWTCA members. Here, I just saw this question and it popped up. Has there ever been a meet in PA? Yes! Actually, the spring national meet was in Gettysburg. And there are lots of tool sales and meets and stores in PA. It's kind of a hot spot. So if you want to see if there's one near you, go to handtoolfinder.com. And on there I have a map of the world with every known place I know of to buy hand tools. handtoolfinder.com. Yeah. So things coming up. On the 8th of November, I'm going to be doing a live build. We're actually going to be making a panel gauge. If you would like to build along with me, I have links to the plans down below in the description. They're completely free, so you can join in with that and build along with it. We'll be starting early in the morning and then going until it's done. Usually a couple hours, and we'll have some fun with that.
I was looking to see if that was a day I was home or not.
The 8th?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Saturday.
Not in November.
October, not November. October.
I was like, no, sir. No, it's not. It's a Tuesday.
The 8th coming up. The next 8th. Yeah. Oh, and I just got my grist mill in today. I subscribe to 3 publications. One of them is the Grist Mill. One of them is Popular Woodworking. One of them is Mortise and Tenon. Grist Mill is probably my second favorite. Mortise and Tenon is by far the favorite. Popular Woodworking is number 3, but those are the 3 I like. I just saw it here and decided to say that. So today we are going to be taking this, which is a garage sale find. It is a Stanley number 6. This is a particular one that was made in England. It's not quite their later model. It's right on the edge between where they went from quality to the handyman went downhill quickly. And so this is just over the hill from where they were making really, really good tools. And so at this point, this would be a really, really good user. But I picked this one up for $5, which is a good deal even for here. Most places around here, I usually expect them in this condition for about 20 to 30, maybe $35. Some places in the country you're going to spend more than that. Some places you're going to spend less. But I was able to get this one. We're not going to be restoring this one. This one is one that I have a demonstration for. At what point do you just say no? One of these days, I thought this might actually be a fun one to restore and braze a new cheek back in there and tear it all apart and basically replace it piece by piece. But today, we're working on this one.
That's the one you just bury for your rose plant.
The what?
You just bury it in the garden for the iron.
Yes. Yeah, so let's take a closer look at this and what we got to do to it. This is a Stanley Bailey. Let me make sure I'm actually in frame here. There we go. And this is the made in England version. I don't know how this one got here, but I was able to find it. Anytime you get these V's on here, this is a later model. Usually, once you start seeing these, you get into the Handyman, and they're not quite as good a quality. But this one still has the frog adjuster plate back here. They've moved over to the steel knob. They have gone with the split yoke, which isn't quite as good. So there's a few things where they've gone downhill a little bit. The castings are a little bit thinner. And there's a few other differences just because they're made in England. But this one's in pretty decent shape. There's some surface rust, not horrible. This side's actually pretty clean. This one is a corrugated bottom. You can see there's some rust over here. Well, the blade is dull. So let's see where this is. Because a lot of times, let me turn this a little more. Turn, there we go. A lot of times, the planes were actually taken out of a usable space, and so a lot of times you can actually pick them up and kind of get something going. But this one, nope. Yeah, no, the blade isn't going to cut anything. It's sticking out too far, and it is a mess. So let's take this thing apart and see what we can get. And sir, if someone throws up a question about, go ahead and yell at me and slam
I don't
something.
need an excuse to yell at you, but
Throw a
I'll
duck.
take it. I need to replenish my duck. Oh, there's one over there.
So, pop this one open. It's a little tight, and it's not springing, so that means that this spring needs to get oiled. Yeah, this thing is tight. That shouldn't be. So we'll oil that. We've got this. Oh my. Okay, anytime you see the chips up here logging in like that, that means that your chip breaker isn't well fitted, so we're going to have to fix that.
See if it will refocus.
Can you fix it? Focus it? Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better? So anytime you see the chips clogging up here at the nose of the chip breaker, it's going to need some work. So we're going to do that. Let me grab my screwdriver here before I forget. We'll take this apart. The back of the iron looks pretty good. The front of the iron looks, okay. Looks good enough. Someone really took a grinder to that. There's all these grinder marks running across it. I hate when people use a grinder on those. But yeah, this thing's pretty dull. And the chip breaker, actually looking pretty good. I think I won't have to do too much of that. Let me just see. What you want to do with the chip breaker is put it on the correct direction. And you want to see if there's any space between the chip breaker and the iron. So I'm going to back it up a little ways, and I'm going to look through the bow, and I'm going to hold it up to the light. And I want to see if I can see any space. And yeah, there's a little bit of space in there. When I compress it, tightening it, the space disappears. The other thing I want to see is, do I get anything, does my nail catch on that edge? And it actually slides over it pretty well. There's a little bit of an edge there, but not too much. So we won't have to do too much of that, but we're going to have to do some cleanup. Let's go back to the frog. And so at this point, this one's actually looking pretty good. Surprisingly, all of these connection points where the metal sits on here, those are all ground flat, which is really nice. A lot of times, those will still be painted or japanned over, and I like to take that off and clean it up. But, ooh, this one's got some rust in here. Or is it just, no, it's just caked on japanning. Japanning was a bit thick right there. Lever cap, the lever adjuster, there we are. Lateral adjuster, that's stiff. That's going to need some work. But it's still the two-piece, so you can see, focus that again. You can still see that it's out of focus still. That looks better. It's the two-piece, so there's this piece here that's been riveted on. That's what you want. When they start to go to the folded metal, the quality of other things start to go downhill. So in this case, I want to get it up and running, and I'm probably not even going to take this frog off. Everything looks good in here. I could take it off, and a lot of people really worry about the bedding on there, and I may do that at the end and show people how it can move back and forth. So if you really want to see me take the frog off and adjust that, we can. Here you can see why it's a split yoke, so it's actually two pieces, which functional-wise, it's really not that bad of a thing, but it's a sign that other things might be done cheaper. This one does actually spin really nicely, so I like that. And the handle is loose, and all of the shellac is coming off. So those are fit and finish things. Tonight we're just going to get this plane up and running, and we're going to make some nice smooth shavings with it. So, things we have to do this. Number one, this handle's got to get tightened up. I'm not going to worry about refinishing it. We can do that another time. This one, I'm just going to put this in here and give this a crank. And what happens is wood expands and contracts. And as the wood expands, it's going to press up against that. It's going to crush all the fibers. And then when it contracts, oh, it's got some wiggle room in there. And so every year it expands and contracts, it puts a little bit more pressure on there. So over time, you have to give this thing just a tiny tweak every year or two until the handle sticks in there well, until it crushes it back down. Eventually, you crush it down too much. But with just that, this tote is good. The knob is good. That is solid. I might just test this for flatness, though it looks pretty good. So here's what I do for flatness. I'm going to stick this on here. And with corrugated, it makes it a little more difficult, but I'm going to put it kind of a corner to corner across the mouth so that the edge of it's touching over here on the edge and the other edge is touching up here on the corner of the plane. And that looks pretty good. Scratching all along. So I'm going to do one quick pass flattening it. I'm going to do that before we get to anything else. Any questions right now while I'm setting this up?
Let's see. Is there a peach?
Is what?
Alan Lewis had asked, hey James, any word on the peach tree near, and then it cut off. So I don't know if that means
Peach tree meat. No, I have not heard anything about it yet. I haven't had a chance to go look it up or call anyone though. If you go to mwtca.org, they'll have contact information for the people in charge of the Georgia area, and you can call them and they will know, because that's what I would do. But no, I haven't had a chance yet to call them up and find out, hey, is it going? So what I'm going to do here is I've got this big belt of sandpaper, and this is a big piece that I got from Klingspor years ago. It's like probably about 60 grit. It's really coarse. And this is really good for just doing that rough check. And I have a piece of plate glass down there. I got that 7-8 years ago. There was a garage sale where they were selling a set of shelves with glass shelves. And so I bought the shelves for it, and they make great plane. They're about 3 foot long. So I'm going to set this on here and just go 2 passes. And I want to see, okay, that's looking really good. So here's what we got. Put it back in focus. So this whole area was rusted over, which makes it a great chance to see it. And I can see the toe here is already, with those 2 passes, it's already removing a lot of it. At the mouth, it's also removing a lot of it. Back here at the heel, I'm seeing scratches here, but I'm not seeing scratches here. So I'm going to do a couple more on it. Now, I know one thing people are going to say is, ooh, you should really put the iron in there and tension it. It doesn't make a bit of difference. That's an old lie. It's one of those myths that kind of grew out. Extension of, you've got to have the plane perfectly flat. No, you don't have to have it perfectly flat. You just have to have it flat enough. And it doesn't have to be fully tensioned or tightened up. It won't change anything about how flat it is. So,
I have a question.
What's that?
When you're restoring your planes, do you ever wear a mask or respirator or anything of?
If I'm really going to be doing a lot of rust removal and sanding and grinding or anything with the anything with a wire wheel, yeah, then I put a respirator on, or at least a mask. But for this amount where I'm doing things, no. Let me grab Sharpie. So in this case, you just show you that was like 3 or 4 more strokes. Now we've got a clean space across the mouth. I've got it touching all the way across the toe, and I've got scratches all the way across the toe here. That's what I'm looking for. 1, 2, and 3. This area does not have to be flat. This area here does not have to be flat. Don't even look at it. Don't think about it. You just need touching here, here, and here. That's all that matters on a plane. So I'm going to take the Sharpie, and I'm going to go stroke, 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 stroke. And let's see what we've got with this thing. And nice. Okay, now in this one, there's a little bit. It's gotten all the mark over here. It's got a little bit more over here. It's gotten all the mark over here. It's got a little bit more over here, but it's still hitting it. And on this side, it's gotten all the mark over here, and it hasn't hit much of this space. So I've got far more wear out here. But because I'm hitting that mark, I'm really not worrying about it. So I'm just going to do like 4 or 5 more strokes, and this thing will be flat enough.
Should I be disappointed you're not doing this on the floor?
What's that?
So should I be disappointed you're not
Yeah, I'm
doing
not
it on
doing
the
this on the
floor?
Okay. There, that's good enough. So, mark, pretty much all gone. Mark, pretty much all gone. Mark, pretty much all gone. A little bit left here, but not enough to worry about. That's flat enough. And some people are going to worry, oh, you're not taking it up to a higher grit. No, you don't need to take it up a higher grit. It feels smooth. It's not going to mark up the wood. It's good. Now, if I were doing a smoothing plane, where I really want that last thing to touch the wood, I might take it up to a 200 grit. Maybe. Maybe not. It doesn't have to be really fine grit. And even the worst planes that I've ever had to flatten have rarely been more than 10, 15 minutes at most. If you're spending more time than that, either you are worrying about it too much and trying to hit perfect flat, or you are going with too light a grit. Coarse grit is great. Now, that one was not in bad shape. Total, it was like, what, 12, 15 passes total. Most planes are a good bit more than that, and I would be doing maybe 100 passes. But even then, that's really quick. So this one was in pretty good shape. So sorry, I didn't get the worst one for this. Let's do the next thing. So we've gotten the sole ready to go. Now, a lot of people are going to worry about, are the sides 90 degrees to the sole? I don't know, and I don't care. And it doesn't matter one little bit. If you're worrying about the sides being flat and clean and true and 90 degrees to the sole, you're worrying about something that really doesn't matter. The question then comes, well, what if I want to use it as a shooting plane? It doesn't matter because there's a lateral adjuster. Lateral adjuster needs to move the iron to be 90 degrees to this side. The side and the sole don't matter at all. It's where the iron is that matters. So don't worry about making it square. I get people bent out of shape. It's like, it's half a degree off. Who cares if it's 3 degrees off? Who cares? Let's sharpen this thing. So I'm probably going to need my extra coarse because this one was last hit on a grinder, so may not be great. Any questions that I'm missing?
So Mrs. Meko, Dennis's wife, wants to know, why is it called a frog?
That actually harkens back to shoe horses. With the if you look at the foot of a horse, what they run on is actually their toenail. And so the toenail is this outside curved part, and there's a little bit of meat here in the middle, and that's the tip of the finger. And so you have the toe of the hoof, and you have the heel of the hoof, which would be the back, and then that soft spot in the middle, that's the frog. And it's actually shaped kind of like a frog, kind of like a this. Now why that's called a frog, I don't know, but this got its name from the horse's hoof. And how the horse's hoof got the name frog, I don't know. So a little bit of cheap Windex on diamond plates. These are DMT plates that I've had for, 7 years now? And I'm going to freehand this. Let's just see how this goes. So I'm going to put it this is my extra coarse plate. I'm going to put it at about 30, 35 degrees, somewhere in that range. Just a few strokes. Let's see how that did. Oh my word, yeah, this is going to take some time. So let me give you a close-up of this thing. See if I can give you a close-up of this thing. How's that coming through, babe?
That's better.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Let me see if I can put it down here. And actually
Sorry, I was trying to find something real quick.
Focus.
Focus.
There we go. So I've got some pitting over here that we've got to get through. And I'm getting scratches all the way across here, which are pretty good. But I'm not getting any scratches over here where all that pitting is at. So I'm actually going to take this over to my extra coarse and see how that goes. And for that one, this is where I really go into it. Now, if I really need to take off, I never take it back to the grinder. I'll use 50 grit sandpaper, and it goes through really, really quickly. I actually can grind fast enough on the sandpaper that sometimes I have to cool it off. And I much prefer doing it over that than taking it to a grinder. You get more control over it that way. Plus, you can do it on a flat surface and get that cleaner edge you want for it. Getting a lot of black sludge in there. That lets me know that I'm taking off metal material. Anytime you see that black on the plate, that's actually the iron that has come off. So I'm running my finger on the back to feel a burr, and I've got a burr on this side. I've got a little bit of a burr in the middle, and I've got almost no burr because I still got a lot of that pitting over there. Let me put this back here so you guys can see this again. So it was just a couple dozen strokes. I still have this chunk of pitting right here. I've got good scratches running all the way across, and this is from here over to here. This iron's looking pretty good. From here over to here, I've got to do some more work. So a little bit more on that. I want to get a heavy burr coming all the way over. Is that a super chat?
It is.
What was that?
Well, Alan Lewis super chatted, so thank you, Alan.
It's what?
Alan just, I don't know if Alan forgot to throw in a question or was saying thank you for the question earlier.
Ah, Alan, thank you.
And then Richard's popped up too.
Richard, oh, fans by Wright.
Yes. It says, question, I'm flattening a Stanley 78 with some rust. I'm wondering if the three surfaces it has on the bottom should all be the same plane.
No, the back of the iron, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit, the back of the iron does not have to be flat. It does not have to be true. It does not have to be clean. It can be pitted. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the very, very tip where it touches. If that's smooth, that's what matters. It does not have to be flat. It just has to be clean. So I'm going to be talking about that a little bit, but right now I want to get this bevel, I want to get the bevel cleaned off. And I don't have too much more on this. Another dozen strokes. But no, if the whole back of the iron does not need to be flat. Even the last inch of it doesn't have to be flat. You only need the front cutting edge to be smooth. It doesn't even have to be flat. It just has to be smooth. So yeah, don't worry about the back too much. A lot of people really get bent out of shape over the back, and you think about the bevel because that's what you're going to be addressing every time. The back, not so much.
Okay,
as long as you strop it every time, you'll be good. What's that?
Richard then added more after I asked.
What's that?
So I'm wondering if all three surfaces it has on the bottom should be all on the same plane, and then it continues, or if the front should be a little higher than the middle and the middle should be a little higher than the last.
Okay, now you've gotten me. Are you talking about rounding it this way? Or are you talking about rounding it this way? So method number 1 or method number 2.
So the bottom.
Yeah, usually the flat is this face here, and then the flat joins up with the bevel. The bottom, I don't know what you'd be referring to, because usually the bevel is the bottom. So I'm probably missing something really obvious. I can tell I got a little bit more on this because I got to pull out that burr just a bit more. I've gotten it like 90% of the way there.
So I don't know if they like more of a slant, like a grade. Do you mean like a gradient, Richard? Clarify.
There we go. That's what I'm looking for. So let me set this over here so you can see.
The sole of a 78.
Oh, the sole of the plane, not the iron. Can you read the question again with that in mind?
Okay, hang on. Everybody's chiming in. Hang on, guys. It's the sole. We figured it out. Flattening a 78 with some rust. Wondering if the three surfaces it has on the bottom should all be on the same plane.
Yes.
Hang on, I gotta find the continuation. Or if the front should be a little higher than the middle, and then the middle should be a little higher than the last.
Nope. Nope. They all should be the same plane all the way across. And that is, if you come from a power tool world, a power planer, you want them to be at different heights, just because of the way it works. It's kind of like a jointer. But with hand planes, you want them all to be perfectly level all the way across. And that's one of the big differences, because you're only taking off 1/100 of an inch or less. 1/100 of an inch is a really big shaving. And so at that point, having that step doesn't matter. So no, you want them all to be flat all the way across. Thank you. my brain is, I'm working on iron. Sorry about that. Oh yeah, I was going to show this. Like, what was I doing here? So now I've got a burr. Just grab it. Yeah, I got a burr running all the way across there. I've got nice scratch marks. I still have a little bit of pitting up here at the back of the bevel, but that's not a problem. up at the front, I've got nice scratches going all the way across. And the scratches are all going at an angle like this right here. So the next time I'm going to try and turn it at 90 degrees so all the scratches go this way and I can see the difference. So now that we have the extra course, I'm going to take it over to the extra course. And this, now that I have that done, this should go pretty quickly. But this will be the first time I'm going to do the back because I've got that burr, we've got the bevel here hanging over that way. I want to take that burr off because it's a really heavy burr and I don't want to work on that burr anymore. Anytime I go down to these, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to set it flat on the back. Here, let's see if I can do this.
And then when you're ready, I owe Alan a mom joke.
What's that?
If a knight in Prague dons his armor, does that mean the check is in the mail?
Yeah, I like that one. Just doing a few passes here. And this will also let me tell where we are. Okay, this is a really good example of what not to worry about. Let me see if I can actually get this on camera. Focus, there we go. Happy. Okay, now, there, now you can see it here. So I've got scratches up here. The plate was touching here, and the plate was touching all the way across here. That means that this iron is absolutely perfect. I do not need to do any more work to this back. Now, if I had scratches here and no scratches here, then I want to work it until I get these scratches all the way across the edge. I'm only worrying about it being flat right across the edge. I want that to be nice and smooth. It doesn't even have to be perfectly flat, it just has to be smooth so I have a good fit with my chip breaker. In this case, I have a bonus of also getting scratches up here. But not having scratches all the way around this area, that doesn't matter at all. This isn't doing any cutting at all right now, so I'm not worrying about that at all. I'm just worrying about right up at the edge. So, I'm going to feel it again because I want to make sure that burr is gone. I need just a little bit more.
All right, you ready for some other questions?
Yeah.
So, Noname Plz asked, I am currently refurbishing a Stanley number 5. Do you have any advice?
Exact same thing.
Exact same thing.
Yeah. Whether it's a jointer or a smoother or anywhere in between, it's all going to be the same thing. Even like a 78, it's all going to be the exact same things onto it. It all just depends on how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go, how flat do you want the sole, how sharp do you want the iron, depends on your work. If you're doing really, really fine, detailed work, you need a sharp iron. If you're using a jointer and you want to know the board is perfectly true, you want the iron to be flat, the plane to be flat. Now, one of the things I'm noticing on this, and this is actually kind of interesting, is I bet you the last person to use this used the ruler trick. Yeah, I bet he did. Let me show you what I'm looking at. And I don't even know if I'm able to pick this up on camera because it's so small. So up here, I've got scratches running all the way along the edge, but right up at the very edge, there's like a 0.5 millimeter of a black stripe going all the way across. And that tiny little black stripe, you can see right here, there's black, and then over here it's silver, and then over here it's black. And that is a place where I'm not actually sharpening right now. I'm having it flat. I'm not touching that tiny, tiny bit right up at the edge. So that means whoever last did this probably used the ruler trick. The problem with the ruler trick is once you use the ruler trick, you always have to use the ruler trick because you're putting a back bevel on the plane. And so I could either grind this down past that, take the bevel and keep on grinding until that disappears, and then I can do it without the ruler trick, or I can use the ruler trick in the future. And you just have to remember, from here on out, this is a ruler trick plane, which I kind of hate. So if I had the time, I would grind it back so I don't even have to think about it, because I keep all my planes just normal. But since this one's done that way, and I'm running out of time, we're going to use the ruler trick. Yay! So, the ruler trick. I was first taught this one by Rob Cosman, oh, come on. Oh, what's his name? It'll come up in the comments here in a minute. The guy who initially came up with it, though I kind of think Rob Cosman's the one who has made it more popular of recent. So the ruler trick is
the ruler trick.
You put a ruler on the plate. Actually, I'm going to do it on this side. you put a ruler on the plate, and so when you're flattening the back, you put this on here, you bring it over to the other side of the plate and you push down. And what this does is it basically...
Wait. Which camera do you think you're talking to?
Ruler over here, you put it up along this edge here, and that basically lifts up the back end of the plane just a little bit, so now it's only going to be touching right up on the edge. And so I'm going to come up in here. I'm just going to do this. A few passes that way. And sure enough, that took it off. So, yeah, I've gotten now all the way across there. So this is a ruler trick iron. Yay! So now we've done that, now we can move on to the others. We've basically taken those two edges and we brought them together. Actually, no, I haven't done this one yet, so we got to bring in this.
Charlesworth is the other name that...
What's that?
Charlesworth.
Yes, Chris Charlesworth.
Well, I've seen David and Robert, so I don't know.
Charlesworth is right. I'm horrible with names. You know, some people say they're horrible with names. They're great with faces. I'm horrible with names, and I'm horrible with faces. I think I'm even worse with faces than I am with names.
But if you fit on an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. So what I've done now is I've grinded and I put that burr back. So we've got the bevel on this side, the burr's hanging back over that way. I'm going to come back over to this one, and I'm just going to freehand that ruler trick into this one. Just occasionally pick up just a hair. And normally when I'm doing a regular sharpening, I'm not going to do the back on all of these. I only do the back on the very last one. But in this case, because I'm bringing it back into work, I don't want that bevel to be, I don't want that burr to be too big. If the burr is too big, when the burr finally breaks off, it's going to take some of the tip off with it. And we don't want that to happen. So we've got our fine. And then go ahead and do that on this one. We've got our extra fine. Just roll that burr over first.
So, is the ruler always that size, or?
The ruler is just a really, really thin ruler.
So it
doesn't have to be anything particular.
It's not a particular ruler.
Nope.
Okay.
And so now I can do the extra fine on the bevel. And so now we've got an extra fine polished burr, polished bevel, an extra fine polished back, and a small burr hanging over the back side of it. To get rid of that burr, I'm going to come over onto my strop, and I could go up and do like a crazy high whetstone and have a lot of fun with that, and those look awesome. They polish the edges beautifully. You get this mirror finish that's gorgeous, but honestly, I find this to be a little faster and works just as well. So on the bevel a few times, just polish that bevel a little bit, flip it over, drag it back. This will roll the burr the other direction, so the burr was going this way, now it's going that way, and we're going to go back and forth a few times. Here, just show this.
So, Evan Van
Bevel,
Dyke
back, bevel, back.
earlier asked, are the nicks in the front of that plane iron edge, or is it just the burr?
That's just the burr.
That's just the burr.
Yep.
Okay.
Just making sure. Yeah, whenever you have a big burr, flip over to this one. Whenever you have a big burr on that, the burr is kind of ragged, and it looks like there's tiny nicks all the way across, and it's just the burr. Yeah, it's looking good. There we go. Should I do the shaving thing? Let's do the shaving thing. Everybody likes to see the shaving thing. So.
I think it would be better if you did your head. But man, you
hard
haven't
to
done
see
that for a while. That's a lot of hair in
It's kind
that.
of hard to see with bald, with a blonde, but yeah. Little bald spot. Hand tool pattern baldness. Do I shave every time I test an iron? No. Do I test an iron every time? No, because I know what sharp feels like. So when I'm trying to find an iron, I go, yep, that's sharp. And I know what sharp feels like on my finger. I know what that grab is. That's what I test. So now we want to mate this to this. And for that, actually I put that away too early because I can tell I'm going to need a little bit of work on the chip breaker here. What I've got on this one is, let's zoom in here and show you the chip breaker. So this is the chip breaker upside down, And I've got rust running all the way across here on the tip. And this is a mating edge. And what I basically want that edge to do is I don't want it to be a perfectly flat bedding edge. I want the back of the iron, and I want the chipbreaker to come down, and rather than sitting flat on it, I want it to touch with just the tip touching. So I want the angle on the back of the chipbreaker to be slightly more acute than the angle at which it touches. So to do that, I'm going to start over here on my extra coarse plate. I'm going to set the chipbreaker on there. We've got the bow hanging on here. I'm just going to run it back and forth a couple times. See what that looks like. Now this is a very soft metal, so it works pretty quickly. And just like that, I've gotten rid of all the rust across there, except for a hair in the middle. And that hair in the middle is right where I could tell earlier I saw a little bit of light coming through. So we're going to do just a little bit more work on that one. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So now we've got that, and it's clean all the way across. So I've got a nice sharp edge running all across. And it doesn't have to be sharp. I don't care about this actually being a sharp edge.
Okay, hang on.
I want a fine
Flip
mating.
your camera.
I want
Flip.
a fine mating edge there. What's that? Out of focus?
No, you got to switch
Oh,
it.
on the wrong camera. Oh, there we go. There we go. I've got a smooth edge going all the way across there. And you can see there's a little bit of rust and pitting back here. But that's okay, it's back here. The point is right up at the tip where it touches is what I want. And I don't need this edge to be sharp, and this edge isn't sharp. It just has to be a fine mating edge. So when I put these two together, they fit. So now I'm going to put them together, and I'm just going to let them touch near where they're going to be on the iron. And I'm going to look through the bow and hold it up to the light and see if I see any light coming through there. And those are good. Next I'm going to put my finger on here, and I'm going to scratch the edge and make sure that when my finger slides along the iron, it doesn't catch on the edge there. I want it to be able to slide right up past it, just like that. So that's a good fitting iron, chipbreaker. I think when people are beginning, that really throws people a lot. And it's one of those things that I talk about a good bit because when I was first getting started, that caused me a crazy amount of problem. I'm going to push it forward until I'm about a 1/16 inch or so away from the tip. I'm not worrying about this being a perfect smoother at the moment, in which case I might move it closer. But for general work, a 1/16 inch is about where I keep my iron at. If I don't care about the grain at all, I might bank it up to an 1/8 inch. But I like it about a 1/16 inch because that makes me feel good. I'll tighten that down. Any questions right now?
Let's see. Oh, yeah. We'll come back to a lot of finishing plane, but someone asked earlier, see, Tabor 99, where did you get that huge sandpaper from earlier?
Klingspor. You go to Klingspor, and they have the cutoffs. And Klingspor sells a lot of belt, sanding belts, and they sell these big pieces of it. If you don't want to go and do that, it's like $20 and you get, I think it's 20 pounds worth of sandpaper. And I've got a ton of it I bought 5 or 6 years ago, and I am maybe 10% of the way through it. So you get a lot of sandpaper. And other than the really fine stuff, that's all I use for regular sanding. The other thing you can do is go and buy a belt sanding belt. So get like a 6-inch wide by 36-inch belt, and you cut the belt, and you can lay it out flat, and that works out great. So I got a few things on here that are stiff, and I really want to get them working well because it is to really finely adjust a plane, you need something that is moving, and this lateral adjuster here is really stiff and really out of focus. There we go. So I'm just going to put a couple drops of oil in here and work it back and forth, and just that little bit. There we go. Now this is running really nicely. Get it all the way over into the extents. Yeah, that's nice. Now I can do it with one finger. Get it all the way over into the sides, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. There, that's pleasing. Okay, that one's good. Now this thing is seized. Yeah, let's work this up too. So flood it with oil, and get this levering. Actually, when this one's this stiff, sometimes I'll use a penetrating oil rather than just regular oil because it'll get farther into that pin. But man, this one is... Got any questions while I work this thing back and forth?
Sure. Let's see. Let's go back up. Jerome Ulrich asks, I can't get my Miller Falls #1 spoke shave to bite. Any advice on how to set it up?
I've got a video coming on that very topic. Because, that's an interesting little spoke shave. And I just recently bought one myself because I've had a couple questions on it and I wanted to experiment with it. And the thing is with a Miller Falls #1, it has a really, really big open mouth. So don't ever expect to get a tight closed mouth with it. It is something that's going to have a large mouth. And that's just the way it is. Man, this one is really stiff. It's not as bad as it was, but this one's got like some gunk in there. And I really want to be able to feel when this thing pops into place. And for that, you've got to have it moving. Because a lot of the function of a plane comes down to how tightly is it held against the frog. If it's held against the frog too hard, you can't adjust it well. And if it's not held against it hard enough, then the iron will move around on you while you're planing. And so this little lever is how you adjust that. And so I want to make sure that I can feel it. And that's about right. There. Now that's movable. Okay, so we've got a flat sole. We've got an iron that's sharpened and ready to go. We're going to put the lateral adjuster in the middle. I'm probably going to move it over to the side eventually. Slide this in, put the lever cap on it, tighten it down. Now that's way too loose. So I'm just going to give this just a tad of a tight. Let's try it again. Yeah, that's what I want. I want to hear that little pop at the end. I want it to move easily and then pop. Clean this up. I got some oil in there. So my iron isn't sticking out at all. I'm going to advance it. Hopefully I don't run into the front of the mouth. And I like to feel it. Some people will eyeball down. I found that it just doesn't give me very much. I can feel the iron coming out this side and not out this side, so I'm going to move the lateral adjuster over a little bit. And now I've got just a hair of iron coming out both sides. Let's give this thing a try. And yeah, let's go ahead and start with the surface planing. A lot of people start with the edge planing just because it's easier to show. Let's do this. So, just with an eyeball, just a little bit of work, and let's see what we get. Okay, taking off a bit heavier than I want, at least for the testing. This one's got a lot of slop in it. Not getting anything. There we go. Now I'm just getting wisp, wisp. You can hear it wisping right here, a little bit in the middle, and then right there. So I'm just taking off 1/1000th of an inch or less. Let me give it just a little more. I'm going to take a pretty heavy shaving here. Here we go. And for most all planing with oak, those are the shavings I'm looking for. These are all a little bit less than 1/100th of an inch. They're probably around 6 or 7 thou. But let me set it up on edge, see if I can get a really fine shaving out of this thing. See if I want to turn it this way, so I can go with the grain. And let's go this way. Well, that sounds good. So I'm getting shaving here, nothing, or just a little scraping, and then there. I want to go until I get the shaving all the way across. There we go. So here are that shaving. Let's back it up a little bit. I want to go until it touches. Just do a 1/4 turn or less. And then I want to bring it forward because whenever I'm using the plane, I want the yoke to be pushing the iron forward. That way when the wood pushes the iron back, it's pushing against that yoke, so the iron won't slowly back its way up. So you guys want to have that forward a little bit. Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Really nice thin shavings. And oak always looks like that, but that's probably about 2 thou, something around that, maybe a little less. Here, slightly out of lateral adjustment. So I'm only taking off the one side. There we go. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, it's pleasing. I love those shavings. Fluffy. They almost go up rather than down. So yeah, that's most of the planes, even when they're covered in surface rust, that's all you need to do to get them working. Everything else from that point on is fit and finish. Redoing the handles so that they feel better in your hand, cleaning up the sides. Pretty much most of the time, unless you have something that really needs a lot of work on the frog, that's all that a plane generally needs to actually be functioning. So yeah. So what questions do we have, or anything particular I need to do on this?
We have several questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we're going to get through them all.
I will hurry.
All right. Qorgyle? I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Not exactly garage sale, but I have some older eBay planes and they seem to sharpen fine, but I just touched up my new Veritas low angle jack and the arm hair test on it is vastly better than those planes. Wondering why that would be. I have also never gotten the chip breaker lined up on those. Usually they're pitted, but am I just doing something basic that's not right?
Sometimes with the low angle bevel up planes, they can be easier to sharpen because they tend to be much thicker. They're usually a really beefy, they're like 3/16 or more, sometimes up to a 1/4 inch thick. And with that, they have a really big bevel. And that really big bevel makes it very easy to sharpen them because you can feel it and you can come along with it and you're not rocking it quite as much. With the thinner, older irons, it's very easy to rock them. And if you rock them too much, you will be spending too much time up on the tip and you'll basically round over the ever so slight edge on the tip. And so you won't get that really keen cutting edge you want until you get used to hand sharpening. So that's the most common thing that would come to mind. But other than that, you can get steel to just about any sharpness. If it's even close to a hand tool steel, you can get arm shaving. I can even get the Harbor Freight cheapos. I can get those to shave arm hair. But it all comes down to skill. It takes a lot more work to do that. You have to be very, very careful with them because it's really easy to damage that tip. And they'll only do a few passes in the wood before they're no longer sharp. But the better the steel is, the longer it will last, the more passes you get before you lose that edge. What's next?
Let's see. Patrick Matherne asked, are the made in the USA Stanley / Bailey No. 5s good to get and restore?
Yeah. Once you get to a little bit past post-war, so somewhere around the 50s, is the height of the best planes ever produced by Stanley. For usability, those are the great ones. Then for a while, 60s into the 70s, into early 70s, they lose a lot of the fit and finish things that make them a little easier. They get things like the split yoke, which functionally wise, it's not going to change a thing, but it just doesn't look quite as good. You get a thicker shellac on the handles. You get things that just don't feel quite as good, but functionally wise, they're fantastic. Until you get into the mid to late 70s and the 80s, and then they really start to skimp on quality, and you see a lot of the features disappear and just they become trash. And so I really can't say look for this or look for that. But generally, once you start seeing the blue sole in the USA, that's where the quality starts to disappear. The big thing I like to tell people is look for the lateral adjuster. If it still has that 2-piece on there, you're okay. If it starts to be the bent over, then not so much. Now I have to say, if it's another company, there are other companies that made that lateral adjuster with the bent over piece and they made them great quality. So don't just look at that and poo-poo the plane. But if you're finding a Stanley with the bent over, then you might want to look somewhere else, or turn into a scrub plane, or just understand it's not going to be your finest smoother. What's next?
Sean O'Neill asked, would you use evaporust or some other rust remover to get the rust off the sole?
This one, no. I'm not saving any patina on this. So in this case, I'd probably just hit with like a 400 grit sandpaper and then some paste wax, and it's good to go. Would I completely grind off and remove all the rust? No. Having a little bit of rust on there isn't going to be a problem. It's more or less a look and fit and finish. But it's amazing what you can do with a little bit of steel wool and paste wax, and it comes off pretty quickly. And something in this case, I wouldn't take the time to bathe it. It would be amazing what this, if I took this to the sink, took it apart and scrubbed it down with some light soap and water, it would look absolutely amazing. It would be wildly different from this. It's amazing what you can do with just a little bit of soap and water, and you can turn them into nice. So yeah, just a little bit of 400 grit sandpaper for this. If it's just light surface rust. If I've got pitting and other things, yeah, it would be a bath. This one, I don't even know if a bath would do it. About half the plane would disappear. But yeah, if any of the rusting has gotten to the point where there's pitting, then a bath is the way I would go. But for surface rust on decent steel like this, it's amazing what you can get with some light sanding and be done with it. What's next?
Let's see. Ash Justice asked, for an iron with a decent camber, would it be beneficial to camber the chip breaker in order to get it placed closer to the cutting edge?
If you're talking about like a scrub plane, I camber the corners of it, but generally I won't camber the whole chip breaker, just because it's not shaped like that. You only get contact right up at the tip. But I will back up the chip breaker a long ways. My chip breaker on my scrub plane is usually like a 1/4 inch to almost 3/8 of an inch away from the tip. So just back it off a ways, and you might have to touch the corners, but generally it's not more than that.
Oh, excuse me, sorry.
What's next?
It's Sarah's bedtime. Evan Van Dyke asked, why do you use the screwdriver for the chip breaker screw rather than the edge of the lever cap? I always found that to work better.
Oh, yuck! No!
You found a trigger point.
Don't use the lever cap. Sorry, you just hit a pet peeve there. No, I come across so many lever caps where they've been chipped up and broken because of that, and they aren't meant to do that, and a lot of them are a very poor fit for it, and they come to a point and they don't fit in there right, and they're going to bounce out easily. This is what's designed to turn a screw, not that. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. So yeah, don't use that to turn the screw. That's just stupidity. What's next?
Clearly one of the few things James is not just chill about.
Between that and tails first, yeah. Those are just two things that you don't do. Now, I have to preface that whole thing because there are a lot of really, really good woodworkers, and that's what they do. And it works fine. As long as you're careful with it, it works. But a lot of good lever caps have died hard deaths from that, as well as a lot of the screws have been torn up because of it. So it's something you have to be careful with. Does it work? Yeah, it works well. But you have to be very careful with it, and you have to be a little more precise. A screwdriver is intended to run screws. And so it's much easier to get a good connection with that. So that's what I do. What's next?
I just am really tempted to just come in and like do that in the middle of the night right now.
Sarah's found my.
If you ever make me really mad. Anyways, Cato Hostland asked, I'm getting tear out with my cabinet scraper. What am I doing wrong?
you're getting tear out with a cabinet scraper, you're probably trying to take too big a bite with it, or it's not sharp enough. Unless you're working on really soft woods, and then you're not sharp enough. The softer the wood is, the harder it is to actually make it work right. Soft woods, you've got to make that thing, you've got to get that burr perfect. It's got to be absolutely precise and just a little bit, not too much. And harder woods, they're really forgiving. But most of the time, it's just not sharp enough. But it could be with a cabinet scraper, you can get that cranked in a little bit too much, so you're trying to take off a big bite, and you'll see that kind of garring up the wood a bit. So those are the two most common problems. But if I didn't get it, send me an email. Be glad to take a look at pictures. What's next?
These next two are more saw-related questions.
Okay. Kind of time for 2 or 3 more?
I'm going to go with the 2 I've pulled out. If someone threw one out in the chat in the last minute or so, I'm sorry. Patrick Matherne asked, for someone starting out, what type of saw is a good starter saw for learning how to make various joints?
Usually I'm going to say the carcass saw. This is the most used saw in the shop. If you're going to buy one saw, get that. A carcass saw or a sash saw. They're basically the same thing, they're just 2 different sizes of it. They're both cross-cut, they're both back saws. Carcass saw is a little smaller, sash saw is a little bigger. Bigger is a little bit harder to control, so usually I say for beginners get a carcass saw, but the sash saw can do more because it is bigger, so it can reach deeper into things. But if you're beginning, the carcass saw is usually the way to go. And you're going to use those saws more than anything else. You know, people think about the big panel saws, and a nice hand saw for ripping and things of that nature. Or, ooh, the dovetail saw. But honestly, you don't use those near as much as I do these. Probably somewhere between 60 and 80% of all the cutting I do is done with one of those 2. Because they're just that's the go-to saw. Particularly if you're doing joinery. You can even do tenons with them. A tenon saw does a little bit better, but a sash saw will do them really nicely. So, yeah.
Well, apparently you answered the second saw question with that. So there was one that just popped out. Senor Nolan asked, have you ever used Japanning to paint plain bodies?
Yes, I have a couple videos on that. But if you really want the definitive answer on Japanning, go look at Hand Tool Rescue. It's like a 45-minute long treatise on different types and methods for Japanning, and it is by far the best video with the greatest amount of information and is really well put together. So yeah, definitely take a look at Hand Tool Rescue and his video on Japanning. But if you want to see it here, I do have a couple videos on how to do Japanning. If I'm restoring a plane to look like original, I'll go with Japanning. If I'm restoring a plane to be used in my shop for my personal use and I've stripped the old Japanning or paint, then I paint it blue. But for most cases, if I'm restoring them for general use, spray paint's the way I'll go. It's just easier, simpler, doesn't stink up the house. But Japanning is really cool and an incredibly durable finish. Just takes a lot more work. So I think that will do it. So yeah, I had something planned for next week, but I don't remember what it is. So if you are going to be around on the 8th of October, we are going to be doing a live build making a panel gauge, and I have plans available for that on my website. I have links to those down below, so you can download those for free and get the supplies you need ahead of time and join the build. So I'm looking forward to doing that with everyone, because we're going to have a good bit of fun with it. So on that note, I think I'll do it for now. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye. And right then the air conditioning kicks on.